Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this edition of ASEC Conversations. Today, our special guest is Commissioner of the Big 12 Conference, Bob Bowlsby. At this time, I'll turn it over to our host, Ashley Hammond. Ashley?
Hello, thank you so much for joining us today. When you were selected Big 12 Commissioner in 2012, many looked to you to bring strength and stability to the conference. What initially was your biggest focus in meeting these expectations?
It had been a time of real turmoil with the Big 12. We had lost four schools over two previous years, and I was minding my own business out at Stanford, and I got a call from a search firm and said, "Come and talk to us." And I told the guy, "Why would I want to do that? It looks like rats leaving a sinking ship." But I agreed to go down to Austin and to talk to three of the presidents and a couple of the athletic directors, and it became apparent that the private reality of the league and the public perception of the league were two different things. But there were things that needed to be done. There were a lot of open wounds. There was still a lot of talk about schools departing the conference, and that we weren't competing at a high enough level to be considered among the elite conferences in the country. The biggest thing was to reestablish credibility, and so we went immediately about that process. The presidents who hired me were very forthright in saying, "We'll do what we need to support you and to support the strength of the conference," and they have done that. My presidents couldn't have been any more supportive. Even though we've had changes in personnel, it's been a good 8 years, and I just think we are now past the point where every time I do a press conference, somebody asks me about changing membership or departing members or adding members. And so I think stability was job one. And then, of course, there were lots of components about media revenue and TV negotiations and all of those things. There's always real and appropriate work to do, but more than anything, what we needed was stability.
As a Power 5 conference, what did you feel sets the Big 12 apart from the others?
Well, I think we've tried to set ourselves up as being a progressive entity. We have done issues forums. I think that's one of the things that has changed over time is you don't get real thorough consideration of the issues anymore among the popular media. Television is in 15-second snippets, and talk radio is different than it used to be. We now live in a Twitter world, and it's difficult to dive deeply into the issues. And so our forums, we've now done 9 of them around the country, and we've taken on hard issues. We've taken on race in athletics. We've taken on women's rights in athletics. We've taken on the topic of esports and whether it belongs in a traditional athletics program. We've looked at the recruiting environment and what could be done with that. And so we've taken on hard challenges, and we've put people together that we knew were going to disagree with one another. And so what we got was long form consideration of some of the most difficult and thorny issues in intercollegiate athletics. And that, frankly, that's part of the reason why I left campus, was because I thought there was a lot right about college athletics, and I thought there was a lot that needed to be improved. And so in the role of commissioner, I've had the opportunity to do that. And the public forums are among the vehicles that we've used to accomplish that.
How do you feel about the recent announcements from conferences such as the Big 10 and Pac-12 indicating their plans to limit the 2020 fall sports season to in-conference play only?
I think in the end, conferences need to make their own decisions, and those two both have for different reasons. The 5 autonomy commissioners have spoken on the phone virtually every day since the first part of March. It's probably as collaborative as we've ever been. I like and respect my colleague commissioners. Even though we spend a lot of time trying to beat each other's brains out on the playing fields, we really do like and respect one another. The Pac-12 is continuing to deal with hot spots with COVID-19, especially in Southern California. And so they really kind of got forced into their decision. The Big Ten, for whatever reason, they thought that now was the right time to make the move, and so they did. I believe that and this is based on the advice of our scientists and doctors, that we should keep trying to put one foot in front of the other and move slowly forward and try and constantly reevaluate what we're doing and trying to look for ways to get the best part of a season played. And only time will tell, because we aren't going to design a structure that works. The virus is going to tell us what structure works, if any. And that's sort of antithetical to the athletic thinking. Usually we see an opponent and we want to put a game plan together and execute and then evaluate. And that isn't the nature of this. We really are going to have to learn to coexist with the virus, and that's going to require a lot of patience.
How do you personally see the upcoming 2020-2021 football season playing out?
I think we'll play some football this fall. I don't think that we'll get through the entire football season without any interruptions. I think there will be disruptions. There will be outbreaks on campus and within athletics programs, and there probably will be some quarantining, and some teams will have to stand down for a period of time, but I think they'll recover and come back. And so I just think it's going to be a season of fits and starts, and the better job we do of mitigation and the better job we do of testing and social distancing and wearing masks and doing all those things, the more likely we are to have a productive football season.
Some have suggested moving the football season to the spring of 2021, which you characterized as the last resort. What is your greatest reservation regarding that proposal?
If you want to have football as a national game, which we all do, you're not going to be playing football games in Madison, Wisconsin, and East Lansing, Michigan on the 15th of January. So I think you're really looking at having a season that runs March, April, and May. I worry about our basketball seasons. I think that it's hard to imagine a sport where you're in close contact with one another. In fact, if you social distance on the basketball floor, they're going to put you on the bench. And so you really have to wonder about the likelihood of getting a complete season in. And I think we'll have disruptions. I think we'll play games, but I think there'll likely be disruptions. So a spring season, in my estimation, is the course of last resort. But it would certainly be a welcome alternative if that's the only one that we have available to us.
How does any new scenario for college football affect other non-revenue sports?
Most of our institutions in the Big 12 derive somewhere between 55 and 75% of their revenue from the college football season. Gate receipts, guarantees from road games, contributions, concessions, and the like, as well as the distributions from the conference and the TV that comes along with it. So it's a very big driver. If we're not playing football, and if we're not able to have something that resembles a normal season with the normal revenue flow, it will be very difficult to have other sports. There just isn't any other way to fund it. Now, we're looking into some credit facilities and ways that we can bridge finance, but these are multi-million-dollar operations, and if the revenue is not coming in, it's difficult to not think that we would have to shut down some sports and delay them or shorten seasons or limit travel and those kinds of things. There will be lots of difficult decisions that will have to be made in the absence of playing football in the fall.
How has the Big 12 Conference dealt with the NCAA decision regarding spring sports seniors having an additional year of eligibility? Did you agree with that decision?
I did agree with it. I was a college wrestler, and as I look at it from the vantage point of a college basketball player or wrestler, gymnast, somebody that was in a winter sport that didn't get to, they got to compete during the regular season of their sport, but they didn't get to go to the NCAA championships. I feel terrible for those young people because they lost out on it. In wrestling, the holy grail was to be a four-time national champion, and there are some young athletes that have a chance to do that now are not gonna have that opportunity. So it wasn't possible to go back and say, all right, well, you've had your entire season during the winter sports season, but we're also going to give you another year so that you can get a postseason in. On the other hand, with the spring sports, they had hardly gotten started, and they hadn't competed very much, and they, of course, hadn't competed in any year-end competition. So it was a little easier. We had to draw the line someplace, and I agree with the decision, even though I can empathize with those winter sport athletes that didn't get a chance to complete their year. So, there was some expense involved, but I think in the end, higher education and college athletics did the right thing and the best thing they could do. So I was supportive of the outcome.
Aside from the pandemic, what do you think is the greatest challenge in collegiate sports today?
I think higher education in general is under stress. It is probably held in as low esteem as it has in its history right now. The college education is not viewed as being an absolute essential part of a career any longer. Most people still view it as a really important thing to do. And a great way to get a well-rounded education and have a springboard, and of course, as we discussed, it's fun too. There's a lot that's about college that you really wouldn't want to miss, and yet it's the kind of situation where it's very expensive. Lots of young people are leaving school with big debt. The stress on higher education is difficult, especially in the pandemic. I think some of the racial tensions that we have in our country right now, some of the societal concerns play themselves out in intercollegiate athletics and in sports in general. Frankly, I think online education, though it may be a necessity right now, online education has served to undermine higher education, especially higher ed, where you're living in residence and being on campus. So, it's an evolution in all likelihood, but it's a challenge to higher education, and it's a challenge specifically to intercollegiate athletics as well.
What are your thoughts on the NCAA decision giving student athletes the ability to market their images and personalities?
Well, I have the honor or burden of serving as the co-chair of the Division I Solutions Legislative Solutions Group, and so that really is what we're spending a lot of time on right now. There's a lot of interest in it. There's a lot of congressional interest in it. There are bills in 35 states that are pending on name, image, and likeness. So the NCAA is partly pulling the sled and partly pushing. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't presume to have all the answers on it, but we will work hard over the next year or 18 months to try and build some legislative structure that would allow us to do it. The biggest challenge with young people activating around their name, image, and likeness is having it become part of the recruiting environment. And you don't want third-party people involved in providing inducements to student athletes to go to specific schools. And so being able to walk the line between allowing the capitalization of name, image, and likeness and making sure that it stays out of the recruiting environment is not an easy balance to strike. And so we're spending a lot of time on it. If it was an easy topic, we would have figured it out a long time ago. But it's very complicated. There are lots of people that would like to characterize it as a civil rights or a human rights issue. It's very easy to draw the dichotomy that you have a bunch of old white men making a lot of money in college athletics and a bunch of young black men doing all the work. And I think we all know that it's not quite that simple, but it's an easy dichotomy to portray. And so, the name, image, and likeness is built into many aspects of college athletics right now. And going back to the comments earlier about societal change and societal tension and racial tension, that some of this is blended into the NIL as well. So it's a very difficult process, one that I've been involved with for the better part of 2 years now, but still have a ways to go.
Can you tell us about two high-profile initiatives for the Big 12 Conference, the State of Collegiate Athletics Forums and the award-winning Champions for Life? What were the driving factors in their creations?
Well, we talked about the forums, and they I'm proud of those. Bob Berta on our staff was the person that did a lot of the work on those, and we have an outside public relations firm called LDWW, and Ken Luce is the principal in that organization, and they're the ones that really put it together. I was a panelist, and I was sometimes the piñata and the punching bag on certain aspects of it, but they're really the people that put it together. And in the case of Champions for Life, we just felt like there were a lot of great stories in our league that weren't being told, and for the most part, they're stories of underachievers who have gotten an opportunity and really done something special with it, made a difference for their families and for themselves and for their futures. And some of them have gone on to play professional sports, or some of them have gone on to have an Olympic opportunity. Some of them have just gone on to a career after college. But the college athletic experience, I really firmly believe that as much as you hear comments to the contrary, it's about trying to help 18-year-old adolescents become 22-year-old adults, and in the process have a great experience with college athletics and get a great education. So we knew that there were a lot of these great stories, and many of the stories were about first-generation college kids that were coming to school, and it was truly making a life-changing difference for them. And so those are both great programs that we continue to put lots of time and resource in, not because they sell tickets for us, but because they're stories that are extraordinary and inspiring. And I very seldom fail to watch them when they're shortly after they're put out, because every one of them is a great story.
You also played a major role in the formation of the college football playoff, which changed the postseason landscape. What was it like to be at the forefront of such an initiative, literally making college football history?
That was really interesting for me, because the meetings were taking place right after I was hired. I mean, it was literally in the first month after I was hired. There was a lot of horse trading that went into it. There was a lot of collaboration and a little bit of head banging. And there were some times when it was some of the people were pretty close to having their shoes off and pounding them on the table. So it was not all serendipity, but it was a good outcome. And the 4-team playoff is a vast improvement over all predecessor organizations and all previous structures. And so I think we can all feel good about that. We're now 6 years into it. I'm on the subgroup that is continuing to evaluate and look at what we've done right and what we've done wrong and how we can make it better in the future. And I expect that there will be some things we change, but there will also be some things that are foundational that we won't change. And so I just think it's been a tremendous success, and been proud to see what it has become.
You were also a member of the NCAA Presidential Task Force on federal and state legislative issues. Can you tell us what this role entails, as well as a key issue that task force has addressed during your tenure?
The task force was really the body that looked at name, image, and likeness and said, we think these things are possible. And the solutions group that I mentioned earlier is the body that kind of caught that report, and now we have to go to work and put it in legislative form so that the members can can go about the process of voting on it. They were probably more the big thinkers, and we're more the worker bees trying to put the whole thing together and get it so that it's not inconsistent with other parts of NCAA legislation. And so the working group was the first big step, and it was interesting to do that work within the environment of the political climate in our country. We are currently working with Congress to try and get what is called preemption, which would make a uniform law throughout the United States, and to find a way to manage it in ways that keep us out of the courts for the long term. So I've done a lot of work with the NCAA over the years, and this is, I have to say, one of the more challenging and one of the more polarizing. There are not a lot of centrists on it. There are people on both sides of the issue, and so we're going to have to try and land the plane someplace in the middle.
In 2002, President George W. Bush chose you to serve as a member of the Commission on Opportunities in Athletics, which reviewed the first 30 years of Title IX. What was the result of your work on this commission?
Well, we ended up with 108 recommendations, I think. Unfortunately, only about 25 of them ever got implemented. We did hearings. I believe we did 5 hearings around the country, and it was I think there was an underlying belief that this group was intending to weaken Title IX, and instead, quite the opposite was true. It was a strengthening of Title IX, and now, as we approach 50 years, it's a different task right now. But one of the things that we're involved with as a Big 12 is when the 2022 NCAA women's basketball tournament comes around, the Division I, II, and III tournaments are all going to be here in Dallas as a celebration of the 50th anniversary of Title IX. So we're getting very excited to work with everybody on a big celebration. It's hard to, I was in college at the time that Title IX passed, and my entire career has been in a post-Title IX environment. It's just extraordinary how it's changed and how the opportunities have grown. And, they're just some of the most inspiring stories there are stories of achievement by young women student athletes. And it's hard to imagine that it didn't exist before 1972.
Prior to coming to the Big 12, you had a very distinguished career as an athletic director at Stanford, where you led the school to 6 of its 17 consecutive Learfield Sports Directors' Cups, recognizing the top overall athletics program in the country. What principles of that success did you bring with you to the Big 12?
Stanford was a great experience. My friends and relatives and colleagues thought I'd lost my mind when I left Iowa. My family has 22 degrees from the University of Iowa. My family I grew up in Iowa. We all lived there. My first job for pay was selling soft drinks in the stadium at Iowa. So to say that my roots were deep was an understatement. But I did. Our youngest child was out of high school. And my wife and I decided that we'd take a little adventure to California. And I would have really regretted not going to Stanford, because it's just such an extraordinary place. There are hundreds of people literally on campus that are the best in the world at what they do. And the fact that Stanford has now won 25 straight Directors' Cups it was a great place athletically before I got there, and it's a great place now still after I have left. I had a wonderful 6 years. One of the things that I really enjoyed was helping to kind of strengthen the football program, and we were good in so many things. An average year was 4 or 5 national championships, and so it's an extraordinary place that does wonderful things, and there's no place in America that does the blend of athletics and academics better than Stanford University.
In your first 8 years as commissioner, the Big 12 Conference has won 19 national championships as well as 144 NCAA individual event crowns. How do those achievements factor into the future of the Big 12 Conference?
That's what we aspire to. We want to win championships. We want to win at the highest possible levels, and we do on a lot of occasions. We haven't won a football championship in a while. We haven't won a basketball championship in a while. We won women's basketball the last time it was held, and we've competed at a very high level. So, we need to keep our focus. We want to play and compete at the very highest levels. Our universities are world-class universities that are huge economic drivers in their communities and their states. They tend to be leaders in medicine and law and all kinds of other professional schools, and so that's the profile we want to have. And so that means helping athletic directors to deploy the resources, hire the best coaches, do the best recruiting of student athletes, compete at the highest levels, and I think that's what our schools stand for, and that's what we want the league collectively to stand for.
Finally, what is your next goal as Big 12 Commissioner?
Well, I think some of the competitive goals are always there. I think another substantial hurdle will be the renegotiation of our media contracts. And at 68, I'm not going to work forever, but our contracts are up in about 5 years, and that means you begin to negotiate at 3 years. And so I suppose that our board would like me to stay around long enough to do those negotiations, and I think that that can be a good legacy, a good foundation for the league, and probably a good way for me to ride off into the sunset.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Those are all the questions we have for you today.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Bowlsby. We really appreciate your time and your insight. And for all of you who tuned in today, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on ASEC Conversations.